decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Post Maze of Millenia. We've already talked about the best rogue and budget decks post Maze of Millenia, but this time around, Chat and I are going to be discussing what are the most powerful decks because of this set. Let's jump on in. So the criteria for this tier list is simple, my friend. We will be ranking these particular Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies based on how powerful they are and nothing else. Of course, guys, I do think that player skill is a huge determining factor into how powerful these decks are, so let me know your experience about these decks down below. We won't be taking into consideration their price range like we do on our budget tier list, and we're going to be using some of the most powerful decks in the existence of the game, unlike our rogue tier list. Of course, if you think that we forgot something, let me know down below in the pinned comment. I'll be sure to try to get it on the next video. And as always, I got my chat here for the spice, guys. They're going to be providing some extra insight on some of these strategies. Let's go ahead and start off with Branded. To be honest, I am going to make a bold take about Branded. I think this deck gets worse in this Yu-Gi-Oh! Format. I think that there's some other decks that can do what Branded wants to do, which is summon a great mid-range board and control the game over time, just a little bit better without the restrictions. I don't think Branded is a bad Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, but I think that there are better options when it comes to the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame. I already started off a controversy here, guys. Me putting Branded at borderline, they're gonna come after me. There's way too many outs to Branded in the current meta. There is way too many outs to Branded in the current meta, I agree. I dip for a second and I see war crimes. Centurion has been doing its damage over the course of the last few weekends. It's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck that can summon one of the most feared monsters in the game. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. Yeah, this deck I would put in solid choice. The biggest reason why I would put it there is because it can just play so many disruptive cards to stop the opponent. Even if it doesn't get into Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Calamity, it has a ton of ways to be able to synchro summon into some powerful cards and has a good mid-range game. I said in your video today, Centurion was a solid choice or getting better, Cali, because Bonfire searches, I forgot, it's either Trudea or a different main deck monster. It searches Trudea, and Trudea is one card combo. So now this deck has multiple ways to one card combo. I completely forgot about that. Next is going to be Chimera. This deck did get a subtle boost. The Earthbound cards could be used inside of it, so when you fusion summon into Guardian Chimera, you can then follow up by synchro summoning into Baron de Fleur and then fusion summoning into Predaplant Drago Stapelia. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure if the biggest problem for Chimera is fixed, which is losing the cards like Ash Blossom, but overall, I think that the deck is a lot better than what it was before. The deck is also now not just locked into fusion summoning. The synchro route does give you other opportunities, but even if you don't choose to go that route, Chimera I think is a little better because of its versatility to be able to be played inside of other decks. Chimera also has a way to bring out the Abyss statue and floodgate the fire decks that are majority of the meta. That might work. Exo's Stepsisters. I know that they say Alabama is where the state where the stepsisters come from, but in Nevada, we go hard for our stepsisters. I don't put that in. In Nevada, sisters are illegal. My innocent boy here. Little Knight getting stuck with her holy stepsisters. Bro, what are you on? It was a joke. I think there's a lot of hype around Exo Sisters because there's a lot of decks that use the graveyard. I think one of the biggest problems with Exo Sister is that it is slightly power crept, and there are a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards to get around it. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in borderline. I think it's a solid choice Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck that does need a great pilot, but does have some situations where it can just win on its own. It being able to banish cards is also huge for the deck, and being able to make Zeus is another good thing about it. Fire Kings with Bonfire absolutely does nothing until the new Phantom Nightmare set comes out. But even so, Fire Kings has proven itself as one of the best decks in the game right now. It's incredibly powerful, it's incredibly consistent, it makes a lot of hand traps look ridiculous, and it only gets stronger. What I don't like about Fire Kings is that it's a deceptively budget deck. You start off with $30 and then $800 later, you have one of the best decks in the game. Ignore the price tag and it's an amazing deck. Imagine if the Fire King cards came out in a main set, holy crap. I actually heard that if Bonfire stays to its price and Populous becomes a secret, this will be one of the most expensive Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks of all time, which is crazy. Now, Monodium is a deck that has intricate 2- and 3-card combos that result in boards that are extremely powerful. The big problem with Vanadium is that it does require a big brain player to play. Vanadium is an incredibly crazy deck with 1 to 3 cards can produce a full combo board that is reminiscent of Don't Play Yu-Gi-Oh! The only big problem with Vanadium is that it requires a huge brain in a very skilled player, but if we set that aside, Vanadium is simply just one of the best decks in the game when you learn how to play it. The deck's only genuine weakness is Drooling Lockbird. It makes a lot of hand traps look silly, which a lot of people are playing right now, and also needs specific cards in certain situations to beat. This is one of the decks to beat in my opinion. Why do you think Vanadium is better than Adamanticators? Because the deck doesn't suck. Vanadium is the reason why players are strongly considering playing Drooling Lockbird, as it's one of the only cards that can completely shut the deck down sometimes. When you set budget aside and you're trying to win the easiest way possible, I think Floowandereeze in terms of budget is an incredible Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but when you take in the factors that I just said, I would put it in experimental. The reason why is because Floowandereeze is reliant on link-based formats where players need to use link cards to be able to establish boards. When that doesn't happen, then Floowandereeze relies on stupid players that put special summon monsters in attack mode. Flame Swordsman. We hype the living daylights out of this deck, and I'm gonna deliver. I think it's still one of the better Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Hear me out. Hear me out. You guys say experimental, but I've already figured out the sauce. Flame Swordsman Infernal Knight is going to be crazy. You are going to be able to get the fusion summonings of Ultimate Flame Swordsman and the Disruption, but you'll also be able to get the Infernoble cards, the synchro summoning into making powerful monsters like Charlemagne and Infernoble Emperor Charles. To be honest, I ain't gonna lie, it's probably a good thing that Isolde 2 Tales of Noble Knights was banned, because if it wasn't, this just might be the best deck. The only problem with this particular deck, you need the Sinful Spoils engine. My only issue, my brain too small for those combos. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it is a big combo deck that requires a ton of patience to be able to play, but skill expression aside, it is crazy good. I don't know, maybe I'm coping on the Infernoble. People slept on the Earthbound Immortal cards. Earthbound Immortal Prisoner Groundkeeper allows you to special summon a level 5 Earthbound Immortal from your deck or graveyard. Bro, you should have known right there that the deck was going to be crazy. Being able to summon Earthbound Prisoner Line Walker to be able to add Harmonic Synchro Fusion gives so many strategies, other ways to be able to play the game. If you can pretty much fusion summon into a level 9 monster, you can make a Baron de Fleur and a Predaplant Dragostapelia, and all you have to do is play the Earthbound engine. I think Earthbound as a deck itself is going to struggle, but as an engine, holy crap, this is going to be good. Runic, Chimera. It's going to be so many strategies that players are going to figure out that this deck is going to be powerful for. Pick up your Earthbound cards because they are good. It's time to rev it up. I was going to say get your game on, chat. I'm down bad. Kashtira as a pure deck, it actually does have some regional success. I'm going to put it in borderline. My only beef with Kashtira as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck is that it bricks pretty bad. It does have access to cards like Dimension Shifter, which can win games, and it also can recycle Kashtira Finra too. But I am especially scared of if we go into a huge 9, 10, 11, 12 round event and you break one of those times and lose the game because of it. Okay, this is going to be another bold Yu-Gi-Oh take. You guys may not like this. Transaction Rollback does come out in Maze of Millenia, and it does make Labyrinth a lot more powerful. Being able to copy your Labyrinth cards like Big Welcome to be able to special summon, or being able to use cards like even Terrors of the Overroot to get another interaction from your opponent is insane. But I think Labyrinth is just solid choice. Chat, I just don't see why people think that Labyrinth is the best deck in the game. It loses to simple cards like Ash and Ghost Spell. It has quite a few things going for it, but at the end of the day, chat, good players know how to play around this deck. Lab is just ridiculous. What's ironic is that Lab wasn't hit by the ban list, and Lab still didn't do the things that players thought it would do. We thought it'd be the best deck in the game, and now it's just Labyrinth. Ash just doesn't beat it. Just use Transaction to get it again. So now you need, yeah, that, I do think that transaction rollback helps, but there's no way to consistently get out transaction rollback to be able to recur your resources, and there are still counters to that card that players are using right now. The biggest problem with Lab is that it probably can never be the best deck. Once it is, players heavily side for it or prepare for the deck, making it a worse Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Kind of like what Branded was a couple of years ago. Callie hating on mommy milkers confirmed. I could never hate on the milk, my man. I am the milkman. I built the deck. I nurtured the mommies until they are who they are now. I said it was one of the better decks in the game. You shat your trap when you come at me, the milkman, about mommy milkers. You're the milkman? I do have the shirt to prove it. Chat, I seen one of the most disgusting things at locals, and I hope it doesn't continue on. A Pearly Orcus player. Guys, what are we doing here? The Pearly cards can discard the Orcus cards, which activate in graveyard to help further the Pearly plays in case they get stopped. I'm not saying that that's going to be the next wave of Pearly. I thought it was really cool. Overall, I would put Pearly into borderline. Pearly doesn't necessarily play into anything very well, but it also doesn't really lose to anything really well. And if we're kicking the player aside, assuming that the best players are playing these decks, I think it can actually do some things against some of the top decks, but not enough consistently to make it a rank higher. My brain hurt for regular Pearly. Now we gotta add another engine. Vanquish Soul Flame Swordsman? Stop, dog, stop. Snatch Steel says, hi, Noor. You can take Noor with Snatch Steel. Rescue Ace. Oh, this one's tough. I think the hit to Rescue Ace Airlifter was fair. It was a really good hit, but still, this is one of the best decks. Diabell Star Rescue Ace has been one of the most successful decks in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. Maze of Millenia, I don't think will change much for the deck, but I don't think nothing will change much against the deck either. The deck is still incredibly powerful, and Phantom Nightmare will make it stronger. All right, guys, the jury is in. After talking to Rika players and watching a good friend of mine play it, I would put Rika in experimental. I think that this deck has mad potential, especially when Phantom Nightmare comes out and gives it support. But for right now in Maze of Millenia, I think that the deck is a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck that loses to singular interruptions. Rika is a real challenge because in my own, many people don't know what to do since the ban list, but it didn't do anything. The deck has a lot of combos. I make Bamboo Shoot Cactus Bouncer. Bro, come on, what are you? And Sweet Marajam Lock? Bro, what are you doing? Bro, he's doing too much. It definitely does take a specialist to figure this deck out, but I think at its best, it's experimental. I would also give the same fate to Dragons here, guys. It's 100% experimental. In this format, there are no dark Yu-Gi-Oh decks that is worth playing Dragon Link to take advantage of. Your bestial monsters get a lot worse, but even worse, those hits to Dragon Link that happened over last format are starting to catch up. The Chaos Space to 1 feels down bad, really bad. At least we're not Master Duel though and have White Dragon banned, so we could still play, right? Solomon Great, oh my God. God, This one's rough. Chat, where are you guys putting Solomon Great? Borderline, experimental, pay the bills? There's no pay the bills. Solid choice, it can't use floodgates. I think we just filled up that experimental really fast, guys. Solomon Great does lose Gozen match, which is crazy bad. One thing that I think we're all looking to is more fire support that definitely makes Solomon Great a lot better. The only good Cybers deck is Math. What are you on? Sword Soul. All right. Hear me out, chat. Sword Soul is way better than what a ton of people give it credit. One of the biggest reasons why Sword Soul is so good is Boxia Brightness of Yang Xing. It being able to spin cards back into the deck is crazy good because it does not destroy and it does not give them the access to the card in the graveyard again. I would personally put Sword Soul with the best players playing it borderline. Sword Soul has a lot of great cards going for it in its favor. Sinister Sovereign Long Yuan not only checks most of the decks above it, it also completely destroys some strategies too. The problem with Sword Soul? It's power cropped. Yeah, that's why I put it in borderline. If you guys want to see a cheap competitive budget deck, you can go ahead and check out my Sword Soul list. It's actually crazy. I think Tearlament is still one of the better decks in the game, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in borderline. It's crazy how I think this deck will never die as long as the fusions stay at 1. It becomes really ridiculous to be able to send them to the graveyard and get a free fusion summon, especially when you start to remember that the tier limit cards are still part of the Visas lore. So even being able to use a pressure planet to be able to get into Kashtira Fenrir, well, that just so happens to get you into your tier limits Kashtira. That sends 5 cards off the top of your deck, and if you combine it with other cards like tier limit Scream, you're sending so much more and getting into your combo. Tier really didn't lose its luster. Tier might even be higher, chat. I wouldn't be surprised if tier gets higher, especially if we stop using graveyard reliant cards. Tier Earthbound, free search. Oh no. All right, you guys ready? Unchained, I have to admit, last time we made a tier list, I put it at the top budget. That probably was a little bit of a mistake. It still is a great budget deck, but this isn't the budget tier list. I have to talk about its competitive viability in terms of the best decks in the room. And with that, I would put Unchained at experimental. The analytics have pretty much showed us that Unchained has completely fallen off. I think part of it is simply because there were a lot of people on the Unchained bandwagon that really didn't want to play the deck, but played it because it was the greatest deck. And then there are people that just found easier plays or easier decks to use. Regardless, I think experimental, trying to figure out how to solve the Shavara problem is going to be a little bit harder than you think, but in practicality, it is very solvable, and the deck is still mixable with other Fiend strategies. Cubics! You guys wanted me to put Cubics in here because you posted it in the pinned comment. Yeah. Cubics best deck? Cubics can still OTK? Bro, there is no way you'll be able to compete at a high-level event with Cubics. It's not happening, guys. I don't mean to upset you, but this is what it is. Same thing for Adamantipators. Damn, Callie, put it higher. Crimson Nova is the best card ever. I hate it here. Vanquish Soul. So one of the things that I realized about playing Vanquish Soul right now is that destroying cards is not a good idea. There's a lot of cards in the game that have built-in protection or will benefit from being in the graveyard. I'm gonna put it in experimental. It's not a real challenge. It's not a real challenge. Vanquish Soul have almost no way to compete against some of the better decks in the game that don't mind being destroyed. It's actually a shame how this deck went from one of the better decks in the game to something where we're gonna have to re-figure out how this deck will play against some of the top decks. Vanquish Soul is solid? Nah, dog. Vanquish Soul ain't up here in my opinion. And it's coming from somebody that's been playing Vanquish Soul for like 3 months straight. It's your best cards are, they're not bad. They're just not great. Vanquish Soul is at least borderline. What about it makes Vanquish Soul borderline? We're moving into a Droll format, and destruction is not going to be at the top of the priority. It's literally plussing every turn regardless of Droll. That did not help your point. That doesn't even help your point. They got drip. Vanquish Soul is a struggle against Fire Kings. It's a struggle against Monadium. It's a struggle against Rescue Ace. It's a struggle against the Centurions, which just got stronger. I think it can go against these decks decently well. It's a struggle against Labyrinth. What makes Vanquish Soul good? Look, I love Vanquish Soul. Everyone knows that I love Vanquish Soul, but I'm not gonna lie to you. He got us, chat. It's okay. Oh, he needs a hug. Wombo777 needs a hug. The deck's, it's not a bad deck. Borderline is not bad. It's just not in a great spot. The only real bad spot is a real challenge. I've seen Orcus Horrors do a lot of things in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it in borderline. It's actually been topping and winning quite the few events, and I gotta say I was wrong about this deck. Not everything that comes off the ban list is complete utter garbage. I think that Phantom Knights are experimental. We've seen a lot of times where this deck gets a ton of hype and doesn't really perform. Sprite, solid or borderline, it's won 2 events and got runner-up all in 1 week. I think Sprite is actually a solid choice deck. I mean, there's so many avenues to do it. The only problem with Sprite is that once decks start summoning bigger monsters, it will struggle against those particular decks. Also, ironically, Gigantic Sprite does threaten a lot against the top meta decks. It prevents them from summoning level 2, so no Kirin, no Labyrinth, no Centurion monsters, no Rescue Ace stuff through Emergence. It's kind of crazy what that card can do. Cyber Dragon, guys, holy crap. All right, Cyber Dragon's not a bad deck. So the good thing about Cyber Dragon is that against the best decks in the game, against these decks, most of them, if you activate Clockwork Knight and summon a Cyber Dragon, you win the game. We've seen it happen to King of Patterson on Master Duel, and it's not far-fetched to think that it can't happen in the TCG. It's just 2 Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Experimental, not cope. Let's not go copium. Cyber Dragon is for players that don't want to use their brain. All right, chat, I'm going to put it in experimental. I think that Cyber Dragon could be a decent going second deck that can wreck boards. But I think that's where it kind of stops. Poor Patterson getting wrecked here. He did get wrecked. I think once players catch on that you're playing Cyber Dragon, they'll tell you to go first, and your boards are not gonna work there. If only Clockwork was searchable in Cyber, I agree. Volcanics will have an interesting spot with me because of Bonfire. I think they're gonna be borderline. The reason why I put them in borderline instead of solid choice is because I think that the best version of Volcanic right now in my head is Volcanic Fire King, and that, like, you could just probably play Fire King instead. But Volcanic is incredibly good at what it does. It's great at being able to inflict burn damage and break boards and establish game states. It's a solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck now. I'm gonna make another bold take, and I'm gonna promise you guys one thing. I will win with Scareclaw Kashtira. I think that's the best possible variant of the deck. And the reason why I think it's so strong in border solid choice is because the deck takes the best of both worlds. You can have your Kashtira, Fenrir, and Unicorn to be able to apply pressure on your opponent, getting rid of their most important cards. But then you also get the Scareclaw cards, which is crazy good. Bro, I'm not gonna lie. The best part about Scareclaw is summoning Vicious Astral out. Seriously. Best part. I think some of the better Scareclaw cards just tell you why Yu-Gi-Oh is heading in the direction that it is. On paper, the deck doesn't look as strong. But then you start to realize that all of these cards have way too many effects, and you can win games simply because of that. Also, you give your opponent the guys that you're playing Monadium would still side for Monadium, and you get free wins because you're not playing Monadium. Bro, I'm telling you, this is a good deck that can OTK going second and can set up some crazy boards going first. Scareclaw Kashtira, mark my words, I will win with this deck. How do you know if it's a Scareclaw deck with Monadium or a Monadium deck with Scareclaw? What if you just don't play the Monadium cards? And lastly, my boys, is Dinos. Dinos did get some support. Kyptoterra is crazy. And the new Horned Swords gives an additional normal summon, as well as can search cards like Draconic Diagram and Lost World. I would say that Dinos with the new support are borderline. The new support kinda fixes a lot of the Dinos problems, but the big problem still remains, guys. Give us Misk! And that's all that I have for the meta tier list post Maze of Millenia. It's gonna be really exciting when we come back and look at it post Phantom Nightmare. Of course, I want you guys to let me know down below in the comment section if I got something right, if I got something wrong, and all of your thoughts. Also, be sure to comment on my pinned comment for some more decks you want to see. I hope you guys are having an amazing day. I'll catch you on the next video.